everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Coco and Daltz. We're real people bringing you real reviews of all the latest streaming offerings on Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, and I'm sure some other random streaming services are in there that we've subscribed to at some point in the past, but not today. So I'm not Daltz.
And I'm not Coco.
And not Coco. What are we reviewing for listener today?
Well, let me just say off the top, Coco, that this is going to be an interesting episode, not only because all our episodes are interesting,
True,
but also because I'm hopped up on allergy medication.
Pollen has arrived.
Yes. Just when you think it couldn't get any worse with winter, along comes pollen season. So anyway, what we're talking about on this episode of the podcast, it is a glorious episode of the podcast. I'm going to read exactly what is in the Netflix description for the summary, because I'm terrible at summaries and Coco is not. So because this was my choice for a movie, I have to do the summary. So here we go. After accidentally crash landing in 2022, time-traveling fighter pilot Adam Reed teams up with his 12-year-old self for a mission to save the future.
And what is the name of this that we watched?
So the name of this is called The Adam Project, or, if you're from Canada, The Adam Project.
I don't think Ryan Reynolds actually said project at all in this movie, did he?
Maybe that's in the bloopers.
Oh, okay. Probably. I'm sure there's many bloopers if it's a Ryan Reynolds movie.
So Ryan Reynolds stars in it, also starring Walker Scobell, who's the young 12-year-old Ryan Reynolds, and Jennifer Garner, Zoe Saldana. And so Zoe's name tricks me up because she's got an accent on the N, but she doesn't have an accent on the E. So it should really be Zoe Saldana. So anyway, Mark Ruffalo and Catherine Keener as the bad guy.
Two versions of Catherine Keener, a CGI'd version as her younger self and regular Catherine Keener as her normal self.
So let's get into that later, because that's a whole other
creepy
tangent.
Catherine Keener.
Yeah, I want to talk in depth about that.
Oh, okay.
So here's what happened with this when we watched this, listener. Is we were like, what are we going to watch? I don't know. What do we want to watch? Oh, I think this new Ryan Reynolds movie is out today. Let's go to the TV and watch it. Let's go to the couch and watch it, because we don't go to the theater anymore. And Coco was like, no, man, no way. I don't want to see that at all.
That is not how it happened.
Oh, okay. But you were reluctant to watch it, and I was less than reluctant, but I still didn't know anything about it. So I figured, Ryan Reynolds,
I didn't know anything about it either.
Yeah.
I just knew it was a Ryan Reynolds movie, and his shtick has grown tiresome for me. So I was just like, all right, whatever. I'll watch it.
So you are earning valuable relationship points.
Yes.
By going along with it. And as a result, it's taken us 2 weeks to review it for various reasons. If this had been season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Yep. Episode 1 of Obi-Wan Kenobi coming out May 25th. Mark your calendars, because we will be podcasting that the second it drops.
And by the way, listener, I'm getting up to at 3 a.m. to watch that. So
I'm only half joking about that.
So what did you think of this, Coco? I want you to go first, because your analysis is in depth and more impartial than mine.
Well, I told Daltz that I was going to do no research for this podcast whatsoever. So that's...
Because it's not your choice, so you're just going to...
No, it's a Ryan Reynolds time travel action movie. So it's not like Dr. Zhivago. Like I really kind of just, it's like, oh, I didn't even know the name of the kid who was young Ryan Reynolds. So, but whatever, it probably doesn't matter.
I only knew it because I read it off the computer.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't love it. The plot was interesting. It was engaging. It was derivative of a lot of other action and sci-fi and time travel movies that we've seen before, but that didn't super duper bother me. The plot, it never seemed like it dragged at all. I actually enjoyed Ryan Reynolds' performance in this.
What?
I said at the beginning that his shtick has grown tiresome, but I felt like he actually showed range in this.
What? You just did a 180.
I know. Well, this is why we don't talk about what we think about stuff before we podcast it, so that we can get the off-the-cuff reaction.
This is beautiful.
From the other person. So Ryan Reynolds plays the grown-up version of young Ryan Reynolds. So, he's like 40. He's been through some stuff and he's jaded, he's bitter, he has regrets, as we all do when we reach a certain age.
Wait, that's a loaded statement right there.
And so he did have his typical Ryan Reynolds, sassy one-liners, but then he also was interacting with Jennifer Garner, who played his mother,
Right.
and I felt like he brought some emotional depth and weight that I am not used to seeing from Ryan Reynolds. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. I was like, who is this hot guy who's crying? Like, panty dropper. So
He's a Canadian. He's a sensitive Canadian lad. That's what happens.
So those are my initial thoughts.
Wow. I didn't see that coming at all, listener. I thought that this was going to be another, this is terrible. Another one of those weep fests that you drag me to adults all the time with the sensitivity and the dad story and everything like that.
And we're just crying into our pillows. I mean, it very much was a story about fathers and sons.
It's all about fathers and sons, yeah. And that's what I liked about it. I agree with a lot of what you said there, Coco, obviously, because, I'm living with you. But also...
just because you're not sleeping in bed with me currently is not because I thought we were going to disagree about this movie. It's because you're sick, and we don't want to get me sick, too. So.
I recommend the allergy medication, by the way, listener. The dreams are amazing. So, yes, I agree with what you said. I'm getting a little bit tired of the Ryan Reynolds shtick in some ways, but in other ways, he's playing himself. This is the way I imagine Ryan Reynolds to be, right? Like in seeing the video. He does a lot of videos on social media, and he does a lot of charitable work and things like that. And he just seems like a nice guy, and he's got a sense of humor. And so I kind of think that he plays himself in all these movies, like most actors do, right?
Yeah, totally.
As we've discussed before, it's just kind of a different version of yourself. And it's really only the really, really talented actors that probably have mental problems that are able to disassociate themselves from their real personalities and play somebody who's not like themselves. But that aside, it's kind of like Deadpool in space. Deadpool was the first movie that really established him as the smart ass hero guy, action hero. He was in Van Wilder, and he was in a bunch of movies where he was like a smart ass, but Deadpool was the one that got him going in this track. And ever since then, he's been doing a lot of these movies. Now, I went to see, last year when theaters were open briefly, went to see Free Guy with my daughters and my mother. And that was a Ryan Reynolds movie, and it was kind of silly, but it was also the same. It was Ryan Reynolds not as a superhero, like just a smart guy. And it was almost like the Truman Show where he walks through and everybody's smiling at him and everything like that. And he's such a good guy. So where I'm going with this is that he's a very engaging guy no matter what he does. I like him. I like looking at him on the screen. I have like maybe a Canadian man crush on the guy because he's from Vancouver, which I love. And this is filmed in Vancouver. He's a charitable, nice guy. He's married to a really attractive woman, and they are very active in charitable communities and stuff like that. So I like him. I like Mark Ruffalo, as Coco knows.
Every straight guy I know has a man crush on Mark Ruffalo.
And Mark Ruffalo is great because he looks like he's the equivalent to our neighbor down the street. He just kind of rolls out of the trailer and then just shows up on the set, and his hair is disheveled, and his shirt is untucked, and he's like, all right, let's do this acting thing. And then he just nails it in one take, and then he goes off to the trailer again. Like that's what I imagine Mark Ruffalo, and he's quite active on social media too. So he might even be listening to this podcast. And
hi, Mark Ruffalo,
and also Ryan Reynolds. They're both very active. So I have a lot of respect for those guys. I think Mark Ruffalo mailed it in a little bit on this one. He seemed like he was not really buying into it as much as Ryan Reynolds was.
I can see that.
But at the same time, I still thought he was good. I still like, again, watching him. He's in Spotlight, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm aware.
And Coco's watching Spotlight, and I'm watching Marvel movies, and it's the same reaction. So generally good. Let's get into some of the challenges this movie faces, if I can move on. Yeah,
so I didn't really understand completely why Catherine Keener was a bad guy. Because she and Mark Ruffalo have teamed up to make time travel possible, but then she goes full bad guy, and there's some discussion about she's buying back all the stock or whatever. And I'm like, so is she like a Bezos? The Bezos of time travel? Or like
she's more like the what's the Facebook guy's name?
Zuckerberg.
He's more like a Mark Zuckerberg of she's more like a Mark Zuckerberg of time travel, is that she wants to take all the credit for this thing that was not completely invented by her.
Yeah, I didn't, and I mean, this movie is what it is. It's like I said, it's not something that you really need to understand.
I think you said Dr. Zhivago, which is an amazing reference for this podcast. I don't think
that should be like the title for the podcast. Like, how does the Atom Project compare to Dr. Zhivago? It'll be like the record scratch when people see the podcast. They'll be like,
if I can
what?
Make that happen. Yeah. Of course there's a connection between the two.
So I didn't think they explained that super well, but you don't really need to understand Catherine Keener's motivations.
Right.
Because she's just full villain.
Yeah.
And, they're trying to save, everything from her, basically. So that's all you really need to know.
Yeah,
you don't have to think too hard about it.
It was really confusing in some ways, but maybe that's because it's a Ryan Reynolds movie and it's supposed to be pretty straightforward. And then there was like a little bit of depth to the plot. And so like she's coming back to change the future because she wants to get Mark Ruffalo off, take all the credit for him and steal this time travel thing and then monopolize it and corporatize it. And so Ryan Reynolds is sent back to make sure that this doesn't happen. But what? I mean, there's a bunch of shoot 'em ups. There's some lightsaber kind of things in there. There's a lot of like Matrix, like you said, Coco. There's a lot of there's a lot of homages to other movies.
Yeah, I can't remember what they called them, but they're like stormtrooper type guys did look like the dark troopers from The Mandalorian. Right. So I said that when we were watching it. I was like, it's the dark troopers.
Yeah. And then when they get killed, they just disappear into vapor.
Yeah. I mean, this movie is just about like explosions and CGI.
So this movie is about that, but it's also about father-son,
right.
And it's also about regrets of your older self. And I mean, I don't want to get too deep on a Ryan Reynolds movie,
right.
But this is where I got a little bit choked up, was on the dad stuff, because having somebody who had a great dad and a dad who's no longer alive, and I can imagine myself traveling back in time to visit my dad, that in itself, and I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Right.
And so that in itself was a very kind of heartwarming thing.
Yeah. I mean, 2 days ago would have been my grandma's birthday. And so that was, a little bit of a tough day for me. I mean, we all have that, we all have people in our lives that we want back. So.
We can relate to that. And so I thought that was heartwarming. And like you said, Ryan Reynolds had a bit of range. I think he was the best performer in this. The kid's voice was completely annoying to me.
Oh, wow.
I just had a hard time.
Record scratch.
Yeah, I had a hard time listening to the kid. I thought he was a good actor.
Yeah.
And he played the role really well. And he was actually one of the best kid actors I've seen.
Yeah, definitely.
In a movie, because I bought him completely. And I didn't really think that he was a young Ryan Reynolds, because the resemblance is not there at all.
Aside from the brown eyes.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he's got red hair, and he's like, and he's kind of slight. I mean, that's part of the character development, is that Ryan Reynolds is all jacked in this movie, and the young kid's like, wow, you got some guns, and he's like, yeah, there's some stuff that happens that makes you do this. And so I get that a little bit, but the kid I didn't buy him as young Ryan Reynolds at all, but he was really good in that role. His voice was just, every time he was on the screen, I was just, oh.
Wow, that's stunning. Normally, I'm the one who thinks kids are annoying.
And then
that's a stunning turnaround.
Jennifer Garner was inconsistent. I didn't think she was great myself. Zoe Saldana, she was good. Mark Ruffalo, inconsistent, like I said. And Catherine Keener. Let's get to Catherine Keener.
The CGI'd 20... So Catherine Keener, as she actually looks in real life, that is like the 2050 version of Catherine Keener.
Yeah.
So when they come back to 2022 and 2018, I believe, there's a CGI'd young version of Catherine Keener, and it's not as creepy as CGI'd Leia at the end of Rogue One, but it's still weird looking.
Oh, it was awful. Every time, like, you could almost see the the grid on her face at certain times, when she's turning and everything like that. I know that's a really difficult thing to do, and we've made amazing strides in that direction as far as FX go and CGI, but it was really distracting. Like, it was, every time she was in a scene with the kid, I was like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Because like the young Catherine Keener and the grating voiced little kid, and I was like, oh, this is not going to end well.
Wow.
But it's pretty cringy, the CGI effects in her, and it's just not pleasant. It's almost like claymation at some points. Like, she turns and they look at her camera and at her character, and she's like, like, it just.
I thought it was distracting. I wasn't as offended by it as you were, or as many people on social media have been by it. But
so you have done research. Busted.
But, well, not just now. Like, I saw something like a week ago after we watched it, like people on Twitter freaking out about CGI Catherine Keener, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Understandably. Like, I like Catherine Keener. She's awesome. And it's not anything against her, because she was actually pretty good in The Villain. And it's nice to see a woman villain.
Yeah, a chick villain.
Yeah, in these pieces. And so I thought that was good. And she was really good. She's good in everything. I mean, she was good in Being John Malkovich, and she was good in everything I've seen her in. So I'm a big fan of hers. It's not that. It's just the CGI was just not pleasant.
So anything else you got to say about the Adam Project? So
the Adam Project, I would give it a recommendation to watch if you're looking for some kind of popcorny, that's got a little bit more depth to it. This is not going to be like a Marvel Explosions festival, but it's still going to be pretty good. The special effects are very good at times. Other times they're not, so it's a little bit inconsistent that way. But I would say overall, like out of 10, 6.5, 7.
What? You give everything a 7.
I don't.
I don't even know why I bother. Like, all right, so Dalton's rating is 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I don't know why I even rate him. I would say I recommend watching this. It's only an hour and 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even 2 hours long.
No, and it doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't, at least for me, it didn't drag.
Yeah.
So you're going to, get into it, and it's going to go by, and it's going to be fine.
And then suspend your disbelief in some ways, because you have to in these kinds of movies. But don't suspend your, when people say suspend your disbelief, you don't have to suspend your guard against bad material or illogical plot developments or things like that. But if you suspend a little bit of disbelief, it's good. Coco, what did you think?
Like I said, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would for being a Ryan Reynolds movie. I'm like the only person in the world who didn't like Deadpool, if that tells you.
I didn't really like it. It's too vulgar for me. It was over the top.
People went crazy for it because it was a vulgar superhero, but I just thought they just beat the dead horse way too long.
Yeah.
Like, a scene would really, really drag on, and I would pick up my phone and start looking at Facebook. I was like, oh, here we go. Okay, great.
Wow.
So, but we're not here to talk about Deadpool. We're here to talk about the Adam Project, and I would probably give it like a B-.
B-?
Yeah.
See, now I'm stunned. I'm going away from this podcast stunned, because I thought that I was going to get dragged through the mud on this one.
We are watching every Ryan Reynolds movie ever for the rest of time, now that I've tentatively been like, he wasn't, horrible. So great.
And hopefully Ryan Reynolds mixes it up a little bit and plays a homeless guy or something like that.
He could, he could definitely expand his range a little bit, like take on some, but it depends on what do you want to do. And
right.
He's got the power in Hollywood. He could probably get some more dramatic stuff greenlit, but do you want to do that?
Well, in this time of his career, he's still relatively young. He's still really fresh looking. He's still he's not saggy or anything like that. So like when you eventually start losing your looks, that's when you traditionally start going for the more dramatic parts and the more serious parts.
That's when you go from Romeo to King Lear.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Wow.
I think we should end the podcast right there, because that's just really a great reference.
All right, rock and roll. So for another episode, I'm not Dolls.
And I'm not Coco.